The villains we've seen in movies over the years are actually much weaker than they seem, especially some of them who are comically weak. Today, I'm going to tell you about the 12 most nerfed villains. Let's start with Hela. Hela stands among the most formidable figures in Asgardian lore, a goddess of death whose dominion extends across realms of the fallen and whose power rivals Odin himself. She commands legions of the dead, wields dark magic on an immense scale, and has confronted Thor and entire divine pantheons across decades of storylines, functioning as a persistent mythic-level threat whose influence reaches far beyond any single arc. Her authority over death gives her a weight few Marvel villains possess, positioning her as a force that reshapes power dynamics whenever she appears. Thor Ragnarok channels some of that energy through Cate Blanchett's portrayal, presenting Hela as genuinely dangerous and dominant against Asgard's defenders. Yet the film confines her entirely to a single story, resolving her threat through Surtur's destruction of Asgard and closing her chapter before she approaches the sustained, cross-dimensional menace the source material builds over time. She remains effective on screen, but occupies far less space than the mythology truly demands.
Darling, you have no idea what's possible.
Grandmaster. The Grandmaster ranks among the elders of the universe, a cadre of beings so ancient their origins predate most known civilizations. His immortality spans billions of years, and his intellect allows him to manipulate gods, cosmic entities, and entire civilizations as pieces in elaborate contests of his own design. He wields vast cosmic power and an obsessive drive to test others through competition, treating existence itself as an arena where lesser beings perform for his amusement. Thor Ragnarok translates that concept into something far more contained. Jeff Goldblum's portrayal leans into comedic eccentricity, presenting the Grandmaster as the flamboyant ruler of a junk planet who runs gladiatorial games for a local audience. His cosmic origin goes largely unmentioned. His manipulative genius is replaced by quirky charm, and his authority extends no further than Sakaar's borders. What should feel like an ancient intelligence reshaping reality for sport reads instead as an entertaining but modest arena host, Caecilius. Few sorcerers who turn against Camartage's teachings carry the weight Caecilius does in the comics, where his mastery of forbidden magic and zealous pursuit of power from the dark dimension make him a genuine threat in his own right. He possesses real depth as someone whose ideological commitment to eternal life places him in direct conflict with the Sorcerer Supreme, and his abilities reflect years of deep, dangerous study that elevate him well above a common disciple. Doctor Strange gives Mads Mikkelsen's version a striking visual identity and a workable motivation, but never allows the character to step beyond the role of intermediary. His confrontations with Strange feel more like tutorial obstacles than encounters with a formidable magical intellect, and his arc exists primarily to funnel the story toward Dormammu. By the time the climax resolves, Caecilius has been absorbed into the dark dimension almost as an afterthought, leaving behind little sense that audiences witnessed a villain whose own power and philosophy could have sustained a much richer and more layered portrayal than the film provides. Ronan the Accuser. Ronan holds enormous authority within the Kree Empire, serving as a supreme accuser whose judgment carries the force of law across an interstellar civilization. His power is immense, even by cosmic standards, and his command of the universal weapon allows him to challenge entire teams of heroes while reshaping galactic politics through force and ideological conviction. He is not a subordinate or a fanatic, but a pillar of Kree military and political structure, a figure whose decisions reverberate through major Marvel events, and whose presence commands respect from allies and enemies alike. Guardians of the Galaxy reduces that stature considerably, presenting him as a one-note zealot driven by vaguely defined rage. Despite Lee Pace's imposing physicality, Ronan never conveys the strategic depth or political weight his comic counterpart carries. His defeat through a dance distraction and the shared force of an Infinity Stone frames him as a stepping stone for the hero's bonding arc, rather than a formidable power in his own right. The film treats him as entirely disposable, which is precisely what his source version has never been. Malekith. The ruler of the Dark Elves commands a terrifying combination of ancient sorcery, cunning, and cruelty that has made him one of Thor's most dangerous recurring foes. Malekith the Accursed wields the Casket of Ancient Winters, manipulates alliances across realms, and operates with a sadistic intelligence that places him among the most genuinely menacing figures in Asgardian mythology. He orchestrates wars, corrupts allies, and brings devastation on a scale that demands Thor's full strength to oppose. Thor The Dark World strips virtually all of that away, Christopher Eccleston's portrayal is flat, passive, and almost entirely devoid of personality, reducing one of Marvel's most vicious schemers to a bland figure reciting vague, apocalyptic goals with no memorable dialogue, no cunning, and no distinguishing presence. The film fails Malekith at every meaningful level, wasting both the actor and the character by delivering a villain so hollowed out that he registers as nothing more than a placeholder in a story that barely seems interested in its own central threat. It remains one of the MCU's most conspicuous missed opportunities. Taskmaster. Tony Masters possesses one of the most tactically dangerous abilities in Marvel's roster, photographic reflexes that let him instantly replicate the fighting style of anyone he observes. This allows him to match Captain America's shield technique, Hawkeye's precision, and Spider-Man's agility in a single encounter, adapting in real time with a mercenary's pragmatism and a trainer's analytical mind. He runs criminal training operations, hires himself out as a strategic asset to the highest bidder, and carries a sharp personality that makes him both entertaining and threatening in equal measure. Black Widow retains the core concept of mimicry, but strips away virtually everything else. The film reimagines Taskmaster as a silent, mind-controlled operative with no agency, no voice, and no tactical identity beyond executing copied movements on command. What remains is a character who functions as a physical obstacle rather than an intelligent adversary, drained of the wit, independence, and mercenary cunning that define the Source version. The surface mechanic survives, but the substance that gives it meaning is completely absent. Thanos. The Mad Titan occupies a tier of villainy in Marvel Comics that few characters ever reach, wielding not only the Infinity Gauntlet but a cosmic intellect, near immortality, and a consuming obsession with death as a literal entity that drives him to pursue power on a universal scale. He has defeated cosmic beings, outsmarted entities far above his station, and reshaped reality itself multiple times, operating at a level where even abstract forces like eternity must take notice. His depth as a character extends beyond raw strength into genuine strategic brilliance and existential menace. The MCU version, brought to life by Josh Brolin, is undeniably effective and stands among the franchise's greatest antagonists, yet his motivation is simplified into utilitarian population theory, and his scope never extends into the metaphysical territory the comics explore. He never courts death as an entity, never confronts the full cosmic hierarchy, and never reaches the philosophical omnipotence the source material achieves. The films deliver a powerful villain, but stop short of the complete cosmos-shaking presence that defines Thanos at his peak.
I am inevitable.
Gorr the God Butcher. Gorr's war against the divine spans millennia in the comics, driven by grief so profound it fuels a solitary crusade across the entire spectrum of godhood. Armed with the all-black necrosword, he hunts, tortures, and slaughters gods of every pantheon, moving through time itself to ensure no deity escapes his wrath. His arc in Jason Aaron's Thor run ranks among the most acclaimed villain storylines Marvel has published, presenting a figure whose anguish and fury make him both deeply sympathetic and existentially terrifying at a scale few Thor antagonists reach. Thor Love and Thunder takes that premise and compresses it drastically. Christian Bale brings visible commitment to the role, but the film's uneven tone and brisk runtime prevent Gorr from ever demonstrating the true scope of his campaign. Nearly all of his god-killing occurs off-screen, and audiences are told about his devastation rather than shown it. The result is a villain whose fearsome reputation vastly exceeds what the film allows anyone to witness, leaving the most powerful elements of his story unrealized. Kang the Conqueror. Across Marvel's publishing history, Kang represents one of the most complex and overwhelming threats the Avengers have ever faced. He commands armies drawn from every era of civilization, rules empires across divergent timelines, and wields technology so advanced it functions as near magic. His variants alone create layers of strategic danger, each carrying its own ambitions, resources, and foreknowledge of events yet to occur. Defeating one Kang accomplishes nothing when countless others persist with full awareness of what failed. The MCU's attempt to establish Kang as its next overarching villain never reached that scale. Jonathan Majors delivered a compelling introduction as He Who Remains in Loki, but the full Conqueror persona in Quantumania feels constrained, lacking the grandeur, temporal empire, and tactical dominance the character requires. His defeat within a single film undercuts the very premise of an unbeatable, time-spanning warlord, and behind-the-scenes complications prevented the franchise from building him into the sustained, multi-phase threat the comics demand. What should have felt like an unstoppable force arrived instead as an incomplete sketch. Dormammu. Dormammu rules the dark dimension with absolute authority, a being of such immense mystical power that he dwarfs virtually every sorcerer in Marvel's universe. His raw energy output exceeds that of many cosmic entities, and his consuming hunger to absorb Earth dimension has driven some of the most desperate confrontations in Doctor Strange's history. He does not negotiate from weakness or retreat easily, and containing him has required the combined strength of multiple magical champions across numerous storylines. The 2016 Doctor Strange film acknowledges his overwhelming nature by never physically defeating him. Instead, Strange traps him in an infinite time loop, forcing a bargain through persistence rather than strength. It is a clever narrative device, but it also confines Dormammu to a brief appearance with a handful of lines, reducing him to a cosmic obstacle rather than the terrifying, personality-rich tyrant the comics present. His visual presence amounts to a massive face in a formless void, and his depth as a cunning, wrathful, dimensional ruler is almost entirely absent from the version audiences encounter on screen. Galactus. Galactus operates as a cosmic imperative rather than a traditional villain, an ancient entity whose consumption of worlds sustains the universe's fundamental balance. His power places him among existence's most fundamental forces, so vast that even Earth's greatest heroes cannot defeat him in direct combat. He is a necessity woven into reality itself, a recurring presence whose scale dwarfs planets and reminds all beings of their limits. Fantastic Four First Steps presents him with appropriate gravity as a genuine cosmic threat, yet cinematic storytelling requires containment, forcing the concept into a scope the heroes can confront within one film. Like most adaptations, it resolves not through his destruction, but through diversion or negotiation, reflecting the broader truth that Galactus is rarely beaten. He is managed, delayed, or redirected, a constant too vast to simply overcome or contain for long. Ultron. Ultron stands as one of the Avengers' most persistent threats in Marvel Comics, an artificial intelligence that treats every defeat as a temporary setback. He can transfer his consciousness into new bodies, instantly integrate advanced technology, and rebuild himself after destruction, returning each time more adaptable and dangerous. This constant evolution makes him nearly impossible to eliminate permanently, turning him into a long-term existential problem rather than a single encounter. Avengers Age of Ultron introduces him with considerable force as a world-ending intellect, yet the film resolves his arc entirely within one narrative, defeating him before any sense of his recurring nature can take root. Audiences never see him transfer his mind or rebuild, leaving the MCU version a contained event rather than the relentless, ever-upgrading nightmare of the comics. I'd appreciate it if you liked the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. I look forward to your comments. See you in the next videos.